Seattle, January 1919, the first of the great strikes that would ripple across the country that year. In Seattle, the strike began by longshoremen, the guys who worked down at the docks, unloading the ships. But when Seattle's dock workers went on strike, the rest of the city went on strike too, to support them. This is what's called a general strike. General in the sense of like everybody's doing it. And so, as the newspaper headline has it here, they shut down the city of Seattle. The wheels stopped turning. Workers, united together, had shut down a big American city. And what did this do for those folks in America who were already afraid of revolution?
It kind of confirmed it almost.
Exactly. Because if workers could shut down one city, in theory, they could shut down multiple cities at the same time.
And what stops them from shutting down all the major cities in the entire country and the country itself?
And then you're at revolution.
Yep.
The Seattle strike was just the first. Strikes rippled on as the year went on, hitting every big industry. Miners and textile mills and steel workers and on and on. And then, by the fall, after these strikes had been going on for most of a year, in the fall, in the city of Boston, the police went on strike. The Boston police force went on strike. And as you can see up here, Boston's criminals celebrated. Boston was hit by a major crime wave as the police were on strike. And the Boston police strike helped turn public opinion against the workers. There was a sense here that things have gone too far. Things are out of control. Policemen shouldn't be allowed to go on strike, people said. Businessmen and politicians said that communism was behind these strikes. Who's really responsible for these strikes? Russia, they said. Communists. There's the red flag, the communist flag, coming out of the steel strike. And this strategy, pointing at workers who, again, just wanted to keep what they had, and screaming communism, that was a pretty effective strategy in the time. And it worked to discredit unions. These 4 million workers who went on strike in 1919, were they really trying to overthrow the government?
No.
No, that is not at all what they were after. But there were some people inside the U.S. who were hoping to overthrow the government. They were part of the anarchist movement. Anarchists are an offshoot of Marxist philosophy who basically hate government and law. And often, when those of us who aren't anarchists think of anarchy, we picture like chaos and streets on fire. But that is not what anarchists picture. Anarchists believe that it's government and law that really push people to do bad things. And if we got rid of government and law, humans' natural goodness would kind of be on display. So weirdly, when anarchists picture anarchy, they kind of picture, humans holding hands and working together, cooperation. Well, here in 1919, with chaos in Russia and much of the rest of Europe, some anarchists in America started trying to blow things up. This is so hard to imagine today, what I'm about to tell you. But in 1919, anarchists sent hundreds of bombs through the federal mail to businessmen, politicians, judges, newspaper editors, basically to the defenders of capitalism. None of these mail bombs were actually very effective. None of them killed their intended target. But did they freak people out?
Yes.
Oh, the country was on edge. And then, in the summer of 1919, anarchists carried out 7 bombings in 7 different cities simultaneously.
Well,
And that was even more frightening, because it showed that somewhere they're connected, right? They're working together.
yep.
And one of those 7 bombings targeted the Washington, D.C. home of the Attorney General of the United States.
Oh boy.
The anarchists just tried to blow up the chief law enforcement official of the United States. The Attorney General, among millions of others, is ready for a crackdown on radicals. And this really launched the Red Scare. Red here is communism. So the Red Scare is the fear of communism. And again, this is fueled by what's come before, right? The Russian Revolution, the strikes, the bombings. And the real sign that something had tipped came in news from Centralia, Washington. That's Washington State, all the way out in the Pacific Northwest. Out there in Centralia, Washington, a union organizer was attacked by a mob, a patriotic mob, 100% Americans. They tied him to the bumper of a car and dragged him through the streets of the town. They took him to a bridge where, according to some accounts, they castrated him, slicing off his testicles, and then hung his body from a bridge, still alive, and people down below shot up at his dangling body, filling his body with at least 50 bullets. And this was a white man. A white man whose crime that got this to happen to him was that he was an organizer for a radical union critical of capitalism. And then, nobody was arrested or convicted for his murder. And what message does that send to 100% Americans all around the country? What should we do?
Go after those who are suspected communists.
Exactly. Go after the radicals. Go after the suspected radicals. And so part of the Red Scare was carried out by mobs. Mobs who have really been encouraged by the federal government. And by state and local governments too. Mob attacks against socialists, union organizers, were now approved. Law looked the other way. But part of the Red Scare was also carried out by the governments themselves. What you see here is a Socialist Party headquarters. And this office was trashed by the Justice Department. Not by a mob, but by the Justice Department, who of course is headed by the Attorney General, who almost got blown up. So, of course, he's ready for a crackdown.
Yeah. Wants to get revenge in a sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the Red Scare played out through 1919 and the beginning of 1920. And across the country, thousands and thousands of people's constitutional rights were violated. And the vast majority of the country approved of those violations because they were scared. Scared of communism. Scared of revolution. In some ways, the climax of the Red Scare came when there were massive deportation of immigrants suspected of radicalism. Here, this ship is headed for Russia, what is now, communist Russia. And there's Uncle Sam saying, more blessed to give than to receive. you take them. And none of these people, deported, were convicted of any crime. They're deported simply because the government doesn't like what they believe. And they're immigrants. This systematic attack on people's civil rights led to the formation of a new group to defend civil rights. The ACLU, that's the American Civil Liberties Union, created by a group of lawyers who tried to defend all these people rounded up in the Red Scare. The ACLU then stepped up to defend people who were unpopular at the time. And ever since then, the ACLU has been defending people in America who are unpopular. The ACLU defends people's right to free speech, free press, the right to assemble. And today, they often wind up defending, neo-Nazis and Klansmen. Not because they support what they say, but why?
Because they're unpopular?
That's not the why. That's just like the way it turns out. It's really just because they support their right to say it.
That they're allowed to say it.
Exactly.
The
No
First
matter
Amendment gives
how
them.
offensive or ignorant
That's right.
it is, you've got to have the right to say it. Because freedom of speech means nothing. Nothing. If the next part of freedom of speech is, as long as I approve of what you're saying.
Yeah.
Right? Freedom of speech has to cover
Yeah.
the most offensive parts of
That's
speech.
right. That's right.
And coming out of World War I, the Ku Klux Klan sprung back to life. This is the second coming of the Klan. The same one that we talked about in the African American movement right after World War I. Fueled, remember by that hit movie, Birth of a Nation, that showed in theaters for all that time? This Klan was patriotic. Just ask them, they'll tell you. Here they are in D.C. with their American flags. Ask any Klansman, and they'll tell you, we're the real Americans. They had a women's league and a junior league for children. So you can get the kids started hating early. They get to 12 and they're not white supremacists, they are ruined. So the Klan grew to a membership of 5 million Americans. If you do the math on that, that means that 1 out of every 7 Americans who could join the Klan did. 1 out of 7. To join the Klan, you had to be white, born here, and Protestant. White, native-born, and Protestant. And one of the Klan's greatest targets of hatred was immigrants. Immigrants, they said, were destroying America just as surely as black people were destroying America. And so now, there is this huge, massive organization the nativists have on their team.